Hi everybody, and welcome to another swim video. Today we would like to talk about swimming around Lido Key. Lido Key is located in Sarasota, Florida, a little south of Longboat Key, a little north of Siesta Key. Many people associate Lido Key with lovely beaches, resorts, and shopping. And it's one of the islands that I wanted to swim around for a while. And the purpose for making this video is for those of you who do want to swim Lido Key in the future, and we will talk about what made it successful, and you'll probably hear mostly my kayaker Bob talking about the experience. So how did you like Lido Key?
It was good. What I liked about it was I got to plan it. A lot of our kayaking experiences up till now have been group activities. When you do a group, you've got to pick a date sometime out in the future, and then you're pretty much stuck with the date, and then however the weather is, you kind of deal with it. This time I told Lynn, if we're going to do this, I'm going to plan it, and I'm going to decide what the conditions are and whether I'm going to be comfortable as a kayaker. Because one important thing is that it is a different experience for the kayaker versus the swimmer. The kayaker is definitely concerned about waves and how they're going, definitely concerned about the wind and what direction the wind is going, and those things don't necessarily bother the swimmer. I mean, in fact, I was surprised how little the waves bothered the swimmer. I'm up here on the kayak, my very first time on the kayak, I was bouncing all over the place, but Lynn and Ken were just swimming and having a great time. But anyway, so I said, I've got to plan this. So this was looking at the weather. I guess we picked a date, and then I looked at the weather, and I had about three or four different apps I use. One that shows me the wind, one shows me tides, and it's a combination of all of that I had to look at. The key with these is you want to time it with the current. You want to go with the current, especially when you're going around these islands and there are passes that you're going to be going through. You do not want to be stuck going through a pass against the current. In fact, in a lot of these passes, you're not even going to be able to go against the current.
Now, do you mean current or tide? Because how can we tell what the current is going to be?
Current and tide, yeah, that's a good point, because people can say, oh, the tide's low or the tide's high, but the way I've read it too, and the way it really is tide is a measure of the height of the water, and then the current is the measure of which direction the water is flowing. So as the kayaker, one of the things I wanted to look at to decide whether we could do this was two things, the tide and the current, because I wanted us going with the current around this island. And that's a timing thing. You have to look at when's high tide, when's low tide, and then how the current flows in between. And I have this app that actually tells me which direction the current's going in each one of the two passes there, which was really handy. The app was called Tides Near Me, if anybody wanted to look it up. And there are actually devices in the water in these passes, in some of the passes, and they happen to be there at Lido Key, that tell you which direction the current's going. We started at Ken Thompson Park, which is the northern part of the island. And then we went counterclockwise. So the tide when we started was low about an hour after we started. That also corresponded to the current still flowing out of the pass, out into the Gulf. So if we're starting at the northern tip of the island, heading out through New Pass, we had the current going with us, and then heading down the outside, as the tide starts rising, the current starts flowing back in, which then starts pulling us in the southern tip. So it's really a matter of timing whenever you're doing any of these islands, is to get that timing right. And we just happened to hit it this time kind of perfectly, because we had current going the entire way around the island. It was much easier on the swimmer and much easier on the kayaker too. And the other thing you have to look at is the wind. Which direction is the wind going to blow, and how much wind is blowing? So when I looked at the wind for the day we were going to go, it was only about 3 to 4 miles an hour, like a low wind. I mean, I like to see anything under 10 miles an hour. If it starts getting into double digits with the wind, I'm kind of wary as a kayaker, especially if it's going to be right in my face. So the current went out, pulled us out of New Pass. Another thing as a kayaker, you actually have to be worried about which direction waves are going and how big the waves are going. So another app that I have was showing me the wave heights projected for the Gulf, and they were showing like 1.5, 2 feet, or 1.5 to 1.9 or 2 foot wave height with like a 6-second wave interval. So I learned a lot too about wave intervals and swell. The swell are the waves that are going out offshore, and the 6 seconds is kind of like the time between each wave as it comes in, 6 roughly. And I was actually timing that as I was going through, and it was verifying, oh yeah, that's about 4 to 6 seconds or so in between those swells. So the key for kayakers is, if these waves are big, you need to make sure you're faced into the wave in your kayak, or you're liable to get tipped right out of the kayak if it hits you sideways. So the key is either faced into it or faced directly away from it. The other thing to be aware of about the effect on waves is how deep is the water, because the deeper the water, the less the waves aren't going to break. So when you start seeing waves breaking, you get those white caps on the top that shows waves breaking. That's generally when it's reaching more shallow water, because that's what happens when it gets close to shore. It starts peaking. If there's waves breaking, you definitely have to watch out for those in a kayak, and you definitely have to be pointed into those as a kayaker, or directly away from those, because otherwise those will definitely tip you right over if you hit it sideways. So there was one time I had to run into that, and it was, you turn the kayak and you just ride up and over it. And then another issue in the passes is the waves go all over the place when they hit these passes, and then there are waves bouncing off the sides of the pass and coming back, and they're interacting with waves coming in, and you get this real odd looking chop. And another thing that I had confirmed is that the direction the waves are going is not the direction the current is necessarily going. Because coming out of these passes, the current was coming out of the pass, but waves were going all over, kind of crisscrossing and doing all kinds of weird stuff. And then the southern pass too, same issue down there going into that. And it's very shallow at Lido Key. That southern pass is very shallow. There's like a narrow boat channel on the southern side of the pass. On the northern end of the pass toward Lido Key, it's very shallow there, and waves were literally almost breaking at that point. And as we're coming down, I could tell that I could see all the white caps happening, and I could see these waves riding up, and then at a certain point I just had to leave, not be concerned about following Lynn anymore, because I had to just stay up in the kayak. And then literally I realized I was like surfing in through the pass on the kayak. I could feel it lift up the kayak, and then you're carrying it straight forward like you're riding a wave in. I mean, that's how.
Were you nervous or scared at this point?
At that point, I was just so busy trying to stay up.
You were very intense and focused.
But it did get a little hairy for a second there. But then, as long as you keep, like I said, for you kayakers, keep that kayak aimed perpendicular to the wave. You do not want to be sideways, because it will just flip you right over. So in that riding in, it was behind me. The waves were right behind me, and it just kind of pushed me, giving me a nice push through the pass. And then I got through, and then I had to kind of turn around and wait for Lynn to catch up, and she just came up. Some other things, water depth. Pay attention to water depth if you're doing Lido Key, because there's a spot. Yeah, like I said, at that pass, the southern pass, it's very shallow there, and it was it was low tide at about 8 o'clock that morning. We started at 6:30. It was low tide, almost like around a little before 8. So the tide was coming in when we hit New Pass, but it wasn't high yet, and so it was still rather shallow.
At New Pass or Big Sarasota Pass?
Exactly, yeah, Big Sarasota Pass,
okay,
the southern pass. So. Pay attention to the water depth. I have another app. It's a GPS app that actually has nautical charts on it that I can reference. And so if you look at a nautical chart, it can show you where the boat channels are and where the depths are. And I still haven't quite learned exactly what all the numbers were, But I kind of use the rule of thumb that the smaller the number, the less deep it is. I mean, I think that's pretty logical. I don't know whether that was yards or feet or meters or what with the number, but I look at that, and I could tell toward the end, as you're coming through the channel, the inland channel, the intercoastal waterway channel. Once you get through the pass and you're heading back north, once you go under the bridge, toward the end, it gets very shallow. In fact, I blew it as the kayaker. I led Lynn right into that, and she ended up having to walk a little bit. But
not much, 100 or 200 yards, 100 yards, and I'll include a picture on this video and a note. There was a previous event that was held at Lido Key, and the route was taking the swimmers out to the right, closer to Bird Key, and then swinging back in. So we would definitely recommend that. Do you think if we swung further out at Sarasota Big Pass, it would have been easier, or not necessarily? We still had a lot of chop and waves in different direction. So even if we swung way out around it, because it was shallow and lower.
Yeah, but we would have had to go too far.
Okay,
I mean, I looked at it, and we would have to cut across, and I'd be cutting across the way the waves were going, cutting across, to get over to the boat channel, and then I just made the decision
we got through there quickly, so it was only a couple of minutes, and it was quick. Okay.
So, but the depth, when you get to the north under that bridge, you stay to the right, and the right is marked. You can see the channel markers, which have the green and red channel marker signs that mark where the boats can go. Yeah. So stay out close to that if you're swimming through there to make sure you can get through.
Yeah. All right, want me to chime in a little bit with my swimmer's experience, and then you can add a few more?
I was just seeing if I see anything else. Yeah, that's pretty good if you want to.
All right, so Bob announced to me that at 7:12 a.m. I needed to be pretty much through New Pass, and that made me nervous. We wanted to start at 6:15. We got a late start. We got in the water at 6:40. So I did not start this swim out in ideal conditions mentally. I had anxiety. I gave myself some pressure. Wow, I've got to swim really fast. So I started out sprinting. To me, it was pitch black starting. To you, it wasn't. You saw lights, and it was a full moon the day before.
Yeah, it was really
So to me, it was pitch black. It was unfamiliar territory. So I had a little anxiety going on, but I had a lot of anxiety. I'm not the fastest swimmer, and is what I tell myself, and I need to get through almost 1.75 miles since we started late in a little over 35 minutes. And I was like, wow, that's pressuring. But guess what? Bob planned this great. So I made it. I started at 6:40, and it was dark. The sun was just starting to come up, and I was almost through New Pass. And I didn't stop until like a little after 2 miles. I usually start every 1 mile at every 35 minutes or so. So this was 45 minutes for 2 miles. We were whipping through. It was great. And I definitely wanted a break. And at one point, this was different too. Bob was leading me. In the past, he was by my side and watching me at my swim pace, and he would stay by me. But this time, he was in front of me, and I felt like I had like a little bit of anger, like, oh, come on, he's trying to make me swim too fast. But it was really good, and I did go probably faster than what I usually would. We finished it in 3 hours and 23 minutes, 7.5 miles. I expected maybe this to take me 4.5 hours, but the current was great, the tides. So anyways, we got around New Pass. At one point, getting the New Pass, I stopped and I yelled, hey, can you wait up for me? He was a good 25, 40 yards ahead of me, and I realized as a kayaker he was dealing with some funky chaotic waves at the pass, and you were looking to get yourself safely a little beyond it. For me, it was not a big deal, but you definitely felt that you had to maneuver through this.
There were 2 points, and it was in those passes where I had to leave you behind and not even think about you, because I was just thinking about navigating the waves, getting out there and making sure I stay afloat. And then that's the reason why I got ahead. And it actually turned out, I think, mentally helping you to drive you to go faster.
And so one thing that this tells me is when you attempt to swim around some of these islands with very strong currents, and a lot going on, the swimmer needs to be completely confident and comfortable in his or her abilities, because your kayak, sometimes the way we see it is we're comfortable, every man for himself, every man or woman for him or herself, because the situation is different for both the kayaker and the swimmer. So I was not worried at all. I knew we would catch up and reconvene when we got out of it. But the new pass to me was not a big deal. So we did 2 miles, we rounded the corner, and that was great. Another thing I was dealing with, foggy goggles, that was annoying. They cleared up later in the day, so that was kind of annoying when it was very dark for me and my goggles were foggy. So there are little things that I have to work on. The other thing that we learned, I'll tell you in a minute, when we got to Sarasota Bay Pass, or Big Sarasota Pass, that we really should secure and rope down everything. So anyways, we were zipping through the Gulf. The weather was beautiful. The water temperature was great. And then right before we got to the southern end, to Sarasota Big Pass, Bob was like, ooh, there's a lot of breakers up ahead. I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So he had to figure out a different strategy, whereas me, I'm just swimming along. So we get to Big Sarasota Pass, and I'm like, wow, okay, it's a little wavy. Oh, and all of a sudden, it suddenly, at first it was a little, and all of a sudden, whoa. And it was, I looked around and just kind of would marvel about nature, because there was a big wave ready to break behind me, one from the side, one coming like 3 or 4 different directions. It was fascinating, and it was kind of fun. And then all of a sudden, Bob was like, boom, shot up ahead, and I'm like, and I kept looking up, he's probably gonna flip, and so I was kind of looking, but I wasn't nervous, and I'm like, whoa, and a wave just kind of pushed me, and I had a little body surfing going on. I also was a little nervous. There have been a couple people who say they've gotten scars, they've gotten cut up from the shells. I don't know exactly where. But it was a little shallow, and I was just kind of keeping aware of, I hope I don't run into oyster shells or sharp shells, but I was okay at the time. And it was just we were just, for our own survival. I know that sounds dramatic. I wasn't worried about being tossed around or anything, but I was kind of concerned with Bob, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me swim through this. And then sure enough, I saw him up ahead, and it got calmer. It almost suddenly got calmer when you get out of the passes.
Oh yeah, because we got into the intercoastal, and once you got in there, it was like glass. It was just gorgeous. And then the current still was, because it was coming in, was pushing us all the way up the intercoastal, and it was that was the best part of the.
It was scenic. It was quiet. I just wanted to,
actually.
And this is, I like to do these islands on weekdays. It wasn't a lot of boat traffic. We've been out there on the weekends, and there's been some loud boat traffic kicking up waves, and ooh. So I just kind of put my head out and just listened a little bit. It was so quiet for miles around. And
boat traffic, another key thing for kayakers. If you're a kayaker, you want to pay attention to the boats that are going by and what kind of wake they are leaving. It didn't happen on this one, but going through Seddon Channel around Davis Island, I got tossed out of the kayak. First time, they say people that ride a motorcycle, you crash at least once. People ride a bike, right. People who kayak, you're going to get thrown out of your kayak at least once. Well, that was my at least one time. But I missed the boat going by with a huge wake that just, it took me sideways. I was sideways to the wave, and when I looked over, there it is right there, too late to turn, and then boom, you're gone. So pay attention when you're planning these trips as a kayaker, what kind of boat traffic you want to avoid. We did this on a Thursday, specifically because we knew it'd be less traffic. I took a day off from work, and I said, we just got to do this on a Thursday. You do it on a Saturday, it probably would have been a completely different experience, especially on that intercoastal waterway with boats going by that would have just kept the waves going all over the place. So.
And how about what you noticed during the Davis Island flip over? The size of the boat, you're starting to recognize what might make big waves.
I'm learning that too. I can tell when boats are going, the faster the boat's going, actually, the less wake they're going to generate, because they're riding up more on the water. And so they're generating less of a wake. But if you get these bigger boats that are actually low in the water behind them and they're going, you can tell that it's pushing a lot of water out the side. So if you see a boat that's way low in the back and it seems like it's moving pretty good and it's low, then watch out for those, because there was a couple of those went by, and then one of them
On Davis Island.
on Davis Island, yeah, is the one that flipped me. Coming to find out, was actually all the way across the channel on the other side. It was a wake from that, and I was focused on another boat that was closer in, and he went by, and I rode over his wake fine. But that one, I totally forgot to keep an eye out for that one, and sure enough, yeah.
All right, and so the most difficult part really was when I had to stand up and walk. It got less than 6 or 8 inches, and there comes a time where you just can't stroke your arm. So I got up and I started walking, and I was watching out for the shells, and no big deal. We finished up and we were done, to me, in record time. That was probably a personal record for Lido Key for me, and I look forward to doing this again with some other friends who are interested in doing it. Any final thoughts about this swim? It was very.
It's all
it's
the
nice
key.
to have successful.
Timing. What are the tides doing? What are the currents doing? And what are there going to be other boats? Those are the kind of things you want to look at and try to maximize all those. I don't maximize the number of boats, but maximize the timing so you avoid all of that.
Yeah.
And then hit the currents right.
So it was great. A good plan, a good execution. I hope you found this helpful. If you ever want to swim Lido Key, I would recommend it. 7.5 miles, give or take. Starting at Ken Thompson Park was great. It's open 24 hours, free parking, 3 nice spacious boat ramps, and the bathroom, we arrived at 6:20 and the bathrooms opened up at 6:25, and we were on our way around 6:40, so I couldn't ask for anything better. So enjoy and good luck. Thank you for watching. Leave some comments below. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.